Hello. We are nearing the end of 2025. It is already almost December already, and I've been thinking about what are some of my favorite books of the year. But of course, I have a whole month's reading ahead of me, and to help me pick out some of the best books to read before the end of the year, I enjoy looking at so many different best books of the year lists. And today I am looking through the Washington Post's 10 best books of 2025. They have picked 5 books of fiction and 5 books of nonfiction. So I'm going to go through their choices and their descriptions of these books and give any commentary that I might have about them. So first, there are the fiction choices, and there is Ruth by Kate Riley. Ruth, the impish narrator of Kate Riley's debut novel, is born into a little and little-known Anabaptist sect in Michigan. Riley, drawing on her own experience, feels no rush to lay out the group's beliefs. We come to feel the tight dimensions of this community just as Ruth does, with a mixture of innocence and incredulity. Riley finds plenty of comedy in the customs of these earnest folks, but it comes from a place of affection and frustration rather than derision. What really interests her is a bright child's mind, Ruth's questions, her wanderings, and her disruptive sense of humor. Riley's style, informed by decades of sermons, aphorisms, and comic retorts, ensures the novel's delightful buoyancy. And this is a novel that I've been wanting to read. I have a copy of it on my shelves, and I've just not got to it yet. I get slightly suspicious if it's focusing on the point of view of a young person, and sometimes young people in fiction can come off a bit wrong, but with the whole kind of small community religious element of it, it makes me think of the writing of Miriam Toews. I don't know if it's really like that at all, or it sounds like it takes a more kind of comic twist on that. So yeah, I am keen on this novel. The next book they discuss is The Slip by Lucas Schaefer, a novel I've not heard of before. I'm not sure if it's been published here in the UK yet. Schaefer's sweaty, outrageous debut is about Nathaniel Rothstein, a troubled 16-year-old from a Boston suburb who is sent to Austin to spend the summer with an uncle. The uncle introduces him to David, a trainer at a local boxing gym. Nathan is fascinated by David, a charismatic black man from Haiti who is everything the white teenager isn't, but suddenly wants to be: fit, confident, sexually experienced. Schaefer's narration is wildly, transgressively hilarious, reminiscent of Philip Roth's early novels. The Slip explores large themes about race in America and the human urge to slide into another's identity. This is a high-wire act, but the breadth of Schaefer's affection feels as wide as the depth of his comedy. I like that they're picking books that have serious ideas in them, but also quite a comic edge to them. And yeah, this sounds really interesting. I'm going to look up more about it to see if it's out here in the UK or if it's just out in the US. Then yeah, maybe when I take a trip there, I'm gonna pick up a copy of it. Next is Stone Yard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. The unnamed narrator of Stone Yard Devotional, a novel of great restraint and wisdom, is a woman of a certain age who's joined a remote Catholic order, or if not joined, at least moved in. Nobody there asks, but she confesses that she's an atheist. Why is she in this abbey is a source of persistent mystery in this novel, which is built on the same rock of introspection that anchors Marilynne Robinson's Gilead series. There are petty disagreements, but no real conflicts, no scandals, no affairs, and yet the quiet, intensely private voice feels more intimate than a library of confessional novels. This is a spiritual journey narrated by a woman who would scoff at such a phrase. And here is the UK copy of this book. This came out quite a a lot earlier than in the US. So it's great seeing it get a new life now in the United States. And yeah, this was one of my favorite books in the year that I read it. And I completely agree with their assessment. I found it so powerful and beautiful and meditative on a whole range of issues, from the personal to the larger, more political issues in our world. But it's also like a strange and weird novel that, yeah, it's just a kind of unsettling book that is really stuck with me, that I still continue to think about every now and then, in which I definitely keep up on my shelves, because I think it's such a fascinating story and way of looking at the world. And I definitely want to explore some more of Charlotte Wood's fiction, because this is still the first and only novel I've read by her. The Wayfinder by Adam Johnson. The Wayfinder takes place almost 1,000 years ago in Polynesia, but its real setting is that realm beyond time and place, where mortals contend with gods, and mythology and history merge like twinned tree trunks. In his first novel since he won the 2013 Pulitzer Prize, The Orphan Master's Son, Johnson boldly melds magic and psychological realism to cast a captivating spell. This lawn book is stuffed with wild adventure and unforgettable characters. Villains worthy of Shakespeare, princes on the run, a teenage girl intent on saving her community, a king whose empire is about to fall. This astonishing novel, at once so primeval and so sophisticated, pulses with the same hopes and terrors that first pricked our imaginations around a fire as the sun set. Wow, yeah, that sounds so good and epic. It's a novel I'm sure will take a long time to read, but also sounds so engaging, with lots of really compelling characters and storylines to it. I think this book is over 700 pages long or something like that. So, and I do like to set myself big reading tasks of big books to read over a course of time. So maybe early in 2026, I will read this book, because it also sounds like one that might get some prize attention over the coming year. And then the final fiction choice on their list is The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. Flournoy's vivid second novel treats the subject of friendship with the dignity and fascination it deserves. Over more than 2 decades, the relationships between Desiree, Nakia, January, and Monique withstand stressors of all kinds: geographical distance, philosophical difference, professional aspiration, postpartum distress. But there is no sentimental conclusion about the strength of their devotion. Some of the women are closer than others as they share love in all its contradictions and complexities, its steadfastness, and its periods of imbalance. Each member of the quartet offers her own point of view, but Desiree emerges as the dominant voice. The novel moves among places, and its descriptions of Los Angeles in particular are incandescent, blending odes to its beauty with fears for its future. And that sounds so good. And this novel has been appearing on so many different best books of the year lists that I think it is a must that I get a copy of this book, whether I think it is out in the UK. So yeah, I'm going to track down a copy of it in my local library, hopefully. And if not, then I'll go to a bookstore and buy it. Next are the nonfiction titles on their list. And I haven't read any of these books because I read a lot less nonfiction than I do fiction. First is The Fate of the Day, The War for America, Fort Ticonderoga to Charleston. Where is that? Fort Ticonderoga. I'm sorry, I've not heard of that before. And it covers the years 1777 to 1780. And this is by Rick Atkinson. This is the second volume in Atkinson's remarkably ambitious planned trilogy about the American Revolution, and it infuses the events and leaders of the war with striking vibrancy, essentially bringing the conflict to life again. Atkinson writes with tremendous verve and detail. The book's portraits of figures like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin are indispensable, and Atkinson humanizes those on the other side of the conflict as well, from King George to rowdy British parliamentarians to redcoat officers occupying South Carolina. His portrait of America's arch traitor, Benedict Arnold, is thorough and brilliant. Readers are subtly nudged into considering what might have been and what could still be. Our cause is noble, Washington is quoted as saying. It is the cause of mankind, and the danger to it springs from ourselves. So this sounds really good. It's not a book that I would naturally be drawn to, although my father is really into American history. I'm sure he's read the first book in this series. So I'm going to ask him about his opinions on this. But I think this would be really useful to read and as information of about early America, which I haven't really, read about or learned about since I was in grade school. So, quite far in the distant past. And it sounds like it gives a much more rounded perspective on these historical figures than I probably got in the past. A Flower Traveled in My Blood, the incredible true story of the grandmothers who fought to find a stolen generation of children by Haley Cohen Gilliland. I think this has been appearing on some other lists as well. After a military coup in Argentina in 1976, the dictator George Rafael Videla led the country through a years-long national reorganization process, systematically disappearing about 30,000 supposed subversives. Among them were more than 300 pregnant women. A brave and stalwart group known as the Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo began protesting across Videla's presidential mansion for the return of their children and grandchildren. In 1979 and 1980, they located the first sets of stolen grandchildren who had been kidnapped as toddlers and infants, left in public places and adopted by unsuspecting families who were operating in good faith. In this deeply researched and cinematically told work of history, Gilliland uses the story of a single family to illuminate the broader devastation and the fight to hold those responsible accountable. And this is a history, of period in Argentinian history that I have been aware of before. I've seen mention and discussion of it in films and documentaries before and mentioned in fiction before, but I think it would be helpful to read this as a more comprehensive understanding of this past in history, especially since there's so much exciting Argentinian fiction coming out. That if I could have this kind of background knowledge to then go and to read that fiction, which I think often references this recent period of history, it would be a much richer experience reading this fiction. And so this is the book I would like to read. Gertrude Stein in Afterlife by Francesca Wade. Francesca Wade's biography tells the story of the modernist American writer, her famed social life in Paris, and the long path of her reputation. She was friends with Henri Matisse and Pablo Picasso. Regulars at the fabled salon at her Parisian home included Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Ezra Pound. When she died at 72 in 1946, Stein was not yet comfortably canonized. It was emphatically not for her lack of trying. I have been the creative literary mind of the century, she once proclaimed. Very humbly proclaimed, right? Many of her notorious idiosyncratic texts languished unpublished. Critics remained fiercely divided over the quality of her incantatory and repetitive writings. In the end, Stein had to entrust those who outlived her to secure her designation as the High Priestess of literary modernism. Now, I've not really read any Gertrude Stein before because it's notoriously difficult writing, or at least writing that does not at all have traditional narratives to it. So I've never been that drawn to reading it, though I've always been fascinated by her as a figure. I've obviously been fascinated by the whole modernist period in France and Europe at this time in the early 20th century. And so I've seen lots of mentions of her, and I think it would be really interesting to learn more about her past and how she fit in. And I didn't know those details about how, she wasn't well known for quite a while until she was kind of canonized in this way. And also, I'm a big fan of Francesca Wade's writing. I read a previous book of hers, which I always keep here because I loved it so much, called Square Haunting. And this was about a number of writers that lived in a certain a small square in a community, just a small block in the center of London. And across different times, there were very different kinds of writers, and how she connects their lives and commonalities in their experiences through this. This is just a wonderful, wonderful book. And it remains one of my favorite. I made a whole video discussing this book once, and took a trip out in London when it was snowing. So it was very atmospheric, and that remains one of my favorite videos that I ever made, just because it was such a special experience going to visit Mecklenburg Square, which is the area which is discussed in this novel during this snowstorm. Which it was a really beautiful experience, but also this is a fabulous book. So looking forward to this Gertrude Stein biography. Melting Point: Family, Memory, and the Search for a Promised Land by Rachel Cockerell. In the early 20th century, Cockerell's great-grandfather David Gilliland was part of the Galveston Plan, a globally coordinated effort to bring thousands of Eastern Europe's increasingly desperate Jews to what might seem the unlikeliest of places, southern Texas. 10,000 Russian Jews sailed to the port of Galveston and settled there in waves from 1907 until 1914. The plan involved notable figures like Theodor Herzl, one of the founders of modern Zionism, and Israel Zangwill, a Jewish English novelist known in his day as the Jewish Dickens. Cockerell began writing a conventional family history, but eventually made it a purely archival project. The book is told entirely in excerpts taken from newspapers, diaries, books, and letters, brilliantly arranged. The effect is electric, plunging readers into an intense and vivid, often contradictory set of observations, as if experiencing history as it unfolds. And that sounds like a really well written and organized nonfiction book as well. Sometimes I can find books about history to be a bit plodding in this way, but that sounds really fascinating. I'm not sure if it's a book that I'll get to any time soon, but it does sound really good. And the final book on their top 10 list is Motherland: A Feminist History of Modern Russia from Revolution to Autocracy by Julia Ioffe. By 1920, Russia had made some of the most feminist advances of any country, including reproductive rights, no-fault divorces, and free university education. Women routinely became doctors and engineers. In the riveting Motherland, Russian-American journalist Ioffe blends history and family biography to tell the story of the 20th century in Russia by centering the stories of lesser-known but influential women rather than famous or infamous men. These include Alexandra Kollontai, an ardent Bolshevik who was the first woman in the world to be appointed to a government cabinet. Ioffe examines tensions and contradictions to ask what happened to the radical ideal of the Soviet woman, the one she internalized from her own upbringing, and the extraordinary, ordinary women like those in her own family. That sounds like a really beautifully personal story, as well as uncovering a whole area of nation's history that, I'm definitely not familiar with at all. So again, this is another nonfiction book that I think sounds absolutely fascinating, but probably one that I won't get to any time soon. But if you have read this or any of the other books on the list that I haven't read yet and want to recommend them to me, please do so in the comments below. And I'd love to hear how many of these books on the list have you read, and how many are you interested in reading now? Please let me know about that. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things and thinking about some of what might be some of your favorite books that you have read so far this year. I am definitely contemplating that in preparation for making a video about my own personal favorites, which I'll post, actually towards the end of the year, towards the end of December. And there's just so many to choose from. But hope you're reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.